Welcome or welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jamie. This is Luna. Hi. Today I decided to do something a little bit different, just as like a filler throughout the month. So, for those who do not know me, I read everything. I read absolutely everything. I read classics, romance, literary, mystery, thriller. I read everything. I do have my preferred genres. I really enjoy reading classics. I love people who recommend new ones to me all the time. I love how certain ones will be completely different from other ones, where they take it, and yada yada yada. I thought it would be fun to rank all of the classics that I have read to this day. Starting off with from school, at least the ones I remember. I don't remember if I read 2 of the books I have on my shelf. I kind of left them off. But everything else I put in the ranking system. There's 26 that we're going to be going through. I'm going to touch on them only a little bit just to give an idea of what they are about and if I would recommend them. So we're going to be doing a tier system. The tier system, we are going to start with the bottom. We got our bottom of the barrel, ones I no longer have, ones that I kind of regret reading, ones that just I couldn't understand, and there have been a few. Next tier rank is lower. These are the ones where I was like, I finished them. Would I consider them a favorite? Not really. Next one is mid-level. These are ones that are like, they're okay. I enjoyed them. I read them. That's it. Like, there was nothing I loved about them. They were just ones that I read. I understand why people call them classics, and leave it at that. The next tier rank is Rex. These are ones that I would fully recommend to people if they have not read them, or ones that I feel like I did enjoy more than the mid ones. Ones that I really enjoyed. They were really good. And the last one, the highest one, is the uppers. These are my top favorites. These are the best classics I've ever read. These are ones that I would reread if I had a chance to and the time. Actually, quite a few of them. I had a lot more than I thought. I'm just going to be pulling off of this shelf, these 3 shelves down here. These are all my classics. I'm going to be pulling them out, showing them to you guys, putting them right back, and then we'll speed run through the whole thing because there's a lot. So I already did the rankings for you guys because I spent so much time contemplating and wondering about the story. Did I like it? Did I enjoy it? Do I remember even the plot lines? Some of them I did not. And it was a whole thing. It took me well over an hour and a half. So I wasn't gonna subject you guys to that. But without further ado, we are going to hop into bottom of the barrel. Least favorite book I have ever read. The one I don't even have on my shelf anymore to show you guys would be Catcher on the Rye. Guys, I do not know why this is a classic. Maybe someone can explain it to me. Maybe someone can work me through why they think that. This is mostly about a guy who goes around and does different things. I didn't even remember if there was a plot line to it. So I didn't vibe with it. I read it almost 4 years ago now, and I still have no desire to pick it back up. The next one is one that I have read recently. I read this year. Would be The Scarlet Letter. This was one I was already hesitant to pick up and read because it's mostly about a woman who is waiting for her husband to return from sea, doesn't know if he got lost, doesn't know if he's dead, anything, and she ends up having an affair, and she is branded with the Scarlet Letter because she won't tell them who the father is. You know, there's more to the story than that, but that's pretty much the gist. Main issue I had with this was the writing. I thought it was very dry, very dense. It was very hard for me to understand. I feel like if you're gonna read this story, don't read the original classic book. If you can't handle it, I would try to read it first. If you can understand it, good for you. If not, I would read this. Read Hester, because this is pretty much the same story with a little more magical realism in it. I love this a lot more, and it definitely represented the story better. Okay, those were the bottom of the barrel. The only 2 that I have that I just would not ever read again. Don't even really recommend, so we're gonna move on. Lower tiers, I got 4 of those. Starting off with the lowest one, Sensibility. I read this one this year. I don't have the copy anymore. Well, I mean, I guess if you can count the Pride and Prejudice and Sensibility combo, but I did not enjoy that. That was my least favorite Jane Austen one, because not only was there not really any mystery to this one, it was just a bunch of girls overreacting. I don't go for that kind of thing. I'm not really a gossip drama kind of person unless it has a plot to it. So for me, it just didn't personally work. I know a lot of people who love the book. I do love Jane Austen's writing. She is one that I can understand if I take the time to understand it. I read that for about 6 months before I finally finished it because I was going back and forth with it and I just could not do it. Grapes of Wrath. Definitely a lot better than Sensibility. Is it my favorite John Steinbeck? I don't know because I've only read the one. I have to read East Eden, of Mice and Men, all the other ones, and I'm hoping they're a little bit better or longer. For me, I don't know if it was the version I listened to. It's mostly about a family who has to travel from their farm to, I believe, California, somewhere like that, where they're advertising, you get work for money, we're taking so and so many people, and you guys get this amount, and, you know, we need people. So they decide that they're gonna move from their farm to California and try to get some work so that they can get money to live decent lives. Meanwhile, this is happening, I think, during the time where traveling was very, very hard for people. I believe this was the 30s or 40s. I could be wrong. It could be the 20s. I'll put it up here when I remember. I'm sorry. But it's definitely in the time period where if you got sick, there wasn't a lot of things to help you. There was a lot of things that happened on this trip and a lot of things they didn't expect. I do feel for them in that manner, but I just didn't really like the ending. That was me. Other people may like it. Go for them. War of the Worlds. I had to read this in school, I believe for my senior year in high school. I didn't really click with it. I would say out of all the books I read my senior year, this one was my least favorite because I understood it the least. I actually forgot I had a copy of this thing. But it's very tiny, very short. Then I understand it, kind of. I just don't know if I just didn't like how we broke it down or how we talked about it, or I don't know if I was really just into it to where I just hated reading it. I don't know. This one I would consider reading again, just see if my experience would be different. But overall, it's a big science fiction story about what would happen if aliens had invaded Earth in really, really big machines. They were like little itty bitty people in really big machines. Picture, you know that machine from The Incredibles? Kind of like that. That's pretty much what it was about. They created a movie about it. Haven't seen it yet. Really don't want to. This would definitely be higher because I would try it again, but not a favorite. Next one, and the last one for the lowers that I think would be the highest ranking one, would be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Very, very short as well. Very simple concept. I kind of wish that we would have built more on it. Kind of like how we did with Dracula, but no, this one is mostly, for those of you who don't know about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, it's a story about a scientist man creates something that turns him into a monster. That goes around rampaging and does a murdering spree, pretty much. Not like big murdering sprees, but enough to cause stir amongst people. So it's traveling through everything that's going on with him. If you guys liked Bram Stoker's Dracula's writing, you guys would like this, and it's very short. I finished it in like 2 hours. So very simple read. It's probably my favorite from the lower grades because not only was it so short, but I understood everything that was going on. I just wish it would have added more to it, if that makes sense. Alright, next section we are in the mids. This is where we are going to be minute. because there's 8 on this list. I would say my least favorite out of the mids, where are you? There you are, would be something I also read in school, I believe my freshman year of high school, and that is To Kill a Mockingbird. Don't get me wrong, I can handle stories like The Green Mile, To Kill a Mockingbird, for those who've read James, those kind of stories. I feel you would like it if you like The Green Mile. This is another one that I would try rereading again, but I do remember a lot of the story. This one is mostly about a girl and her father is playing a lawyer who is trying to defend this man who had either committed a murder or a really serious crime. They're just doing in general because they don't believe him because he's African American. It's one of those stories. I believe it takes place in the 60s. I'll double check it up here, but I really enjoyed it to a point. It's another one that I wish I didn't read in school, and I probably would have liked it a lot better. I've learned with just books that they pick in school, it all depends on how you go about explaining it. And this one I did with my teacher who lives here. She did really well with trying to get us into the story and teach us a few things, but I think one of the main reasons why I didn't enjoy it as much was because I hate reading out loud, which is ironic now because not only do I do it for my husband, but I also have a YouTube channel where I talk all the time. So make that make sense. I don't know if it was just because I was scarred by that and because I felt embarrassed doing it in front of 30 plus students who were also in the room, and a lot of them were a lot better reading out loud than I was. I don't know if that had something to do with it, because for her classes, that was the only time where we did that. I didn't get to do it for the rest of them, and I did have a lot better time with the other books. So I don't know if that had something to do with it, but I would try rereading it again. I know Sarah's Nightstand, she loves this book wholeheartedly. I know she speaks very highly of it. I would try reading it again. Moving on, we have another little book that was recommended to me by my father. We have Animal Farm by George Orwell. This one is so funny. When he told me what this is about, I'm like, you're serious? This book is about what would happen if animals overthrew humans and started creating their own little civilization on the farm. Overruling the people, doing things differently, commanding order, all that other fun stuff. It's very short. It's only about 100 pages. It took me a day. But not only is it just like, oh my gosh, but it definitely puts in perspective of justice and equality and all this other stuff that goes along with it. But also just how they are mistreated. They feel like they're really, really mistreated and they feel like they deserve better. It's a very interesting story. If you hadn't read this, I would say it's a dystopian. I feel like people would disagree with me, but it is one of the better ones. So next one, another one that my father recommended to me would be Lord of the Flies by William Golding. This book is very, very interesting. I did enjoy it, but once again, I got the feeling like there was something more that could have been added to it to make it a little bit longer. I did enjoy it. This one, a plane crashes. This is in the middle of the World War, so people don't get to them right away. But there is a group of schoolboys who are now stranded on this island, and they try to commit the same thing with like Animal Farm you do to the justice and equality and trying to figure out like a hierarchy structure. It takes a weird turn I didn't think it was gonna go towards. It's one of the better ones. I think it's okay. A lot of people read this in school. I didn't get to read it, but like I said, my father recommended this one to me. He recommended a lot of these kind of books to me. Next one that I would say is a harder one that I kind of questioned because I've tried reading Charles Dickens before. I do not do well with Charles Dickens writing. It just doesn't work for me. It's way more complicated than Shakespeare and Jane Austen put together. It's just not a favorite I gravitate towards. However, for this one, I did enjoy the shortened version of it. Yes, I cheated. It's okay. I understood it. I actually love this quote on the back. Ain't no word I was too cowardly to do what I knew to be right, as I had been too cowardly to avoid doing what I knew to be wrong. This is mostly a story, if I remember right. It's very hard to follow this one along, but I'm surprised I even finished it. I am so rusty. Follows the orphan Pip from his rural humble beginnings under the care of a not-so-pleasant sister to the streets of Victorian London as he strives to become a gentleman after receiving great expectations from a mysterious patron. So we move forward with his story. It was a very simple story. Compared to some of the other ones that I have read, this one just seemed very simple for a very thick book. It is a very cute story when we get more into him being a grown-up and meeting other characters and them coming into it. It's kind of just, it's flowing, but we're not really going anywhere. That's kind of what it felt like when I was reading it or listening to it. I don't know what it was about it. It just didn't wow me. But it was okay. It was a Charles Dickens book I could understand, so kudos for that. The next one is one that I actually read when I was a kid, and I'm very happy that I got this copy. I loved this story as a kid. I still do. The Secret Garden is about a little girl who comes to stay with, was it her uncle or, I don't remember. I don't remember if it was an uncle or a guardian who takes a little girl in, and she is trying to get along with this little boy who is very sickly. He can't really do much and is sick in bed most of the time. She goes out in the backyard and she discovers a secret garden that she hangs out in and starts using her imagination, and then eventually it's a story about friendship and trying to cope with loss at the same time of just adjusting to everything. I did really enjoy this when I was a kid, and it is still one of my favorites. I would definitely read this again, especially with this cover. I haven't read this particular copy yet, but it is one of my favorite ones. Next up is one that I read last year. I did read this last year. We read Aladdin and the Arabian Nights. This one is definitely ranking up there with one of my favorites because I just love an Aladdin themed story. I don't know what it is. It could be the atmosphere about the sand and the heat, or the tropicalness of it. I don't know. I probably will never know. But these all appeal to me because they are a lot more brutal than I was anticipating. This completely took me by surprise. I thought it was okay because it's just a bunch of little stories all put together. We got a mix of Aladdin and his lamp, to the 40 Thieves, to Sinbad, to all those other big stories, and there's a lot of other stories that are involved with this. There's one favorite I liked about A Tale of Three Brothers. Each of the brothers tried doing something different in order to either help with something or to prove themselves worthy of being the Sultan, I believe. I could be wrong, I don't remember that much about it, but I really did enjoy these stories and reading all of them and realizing they're a lot more gory than anybody has ever talked about before. So I would recommend it if you just want to read something kind of like the regular fairy tales, just a different vibe. Next one, this also ties into this. I read Pride and Prejudice this year because I do understand why everybody loves this book, and there's a little bit of that mystery that I enjoy from Jane Austen, the pettiness, the misunderstanding, learning simple lessons like communication is a wonderful thing, or not misinterpreting what the person is saying, which ties in with the pride part of the story. I did enjoy it. Did I wish it was a little longer? No, but I don't know what I wish. There was just something about it that I just wanted more of. I didn't think it was going to be this simple of a story. I thought it was going to be drawn out or a little more complicated, or we would have gotten a little more parties and stuff like that. I always enjoy when they do parties and they're conversing with one another, and I just think it's so cool to see how far we've come as a society in that manner. But I did enjoy the story. For those of you who don't know what Pride and Prejudice is about, this is mostly about a lady. She has sisters and her parents. Her mother is like a die-hard, oh, that's the reason why. That's why I didn't like it as much. The mother pissed me off. Oh my god, my babies are not gonna get married by the time they're a lady. The mother just made me so mad. Just like they will get married either when they're ready or they find someone who's not in or out to get their money, which is a very common thing in this type of world, I guess. I enjoyed it to a point. I just wish there would have been more to it. For the last one of the mids and the top ranking so far, the ones that I would definitely read again, the one where it's just like, it was okay. I read this when I was younger, still remember most of the story, watched the movie, really enjoy it. That would be Around the World in 80 Days. A lot of people have watched the movie with Jackie Chan in it. I personally kind of like the book more. That's just my opinion. I grew up watching the movie, but at the same time when I read the book, I'm like, there was so much that they left out. Like there was traveling on elephants, there was, a lot more battle scenes and stuff with him trying to flee. It sounds a lot more sophisticated. I really enjoyed what they did with this and how they summed up the ending in this versus the movie. I did enjoy that a lot better, like an epiphany rather than just getting there, doing all the drama, and then coming to that, they're like, what? I really enjoyed this. This is kind of what I feel like is an underrated classic. No one really talks about it. It's got adventure in it. It's funny to a certain point, and it's just very, very different, and I enjoyed it. Even as a kid, and I just love the cover. I mean, really? Moving on to my recommendations. We have 6 of those. Alright, starting off with the lowest of the Rex. My lowest favorite of the Rex that I suggest everybody read at least once would be 1984 by George Orwell. Same one who wrote Animal Farm. It's a very interesting idea. I think I just had an issue with this because the writing was very bland, but it was such a good story. It was such a different idea. If you guys like a lot of corruption and simple-minded, if you start thinking about these thoughts, then you're gonna get erased kind of thing. I really enjoyed it. It's mostly a utopia about people thinking one way versus what you're supposed to think. They're very paranoid, use of technology to monitor people, monitor what they say. There is basically no freedom of speech. There is no privacy. There is nothing like that in this world. Sound familiar? Sounds like a lot of things that are going on right now. I would definitely read this. It is going to be a little bland. You kind of just gotta get past that a little bit and dig more into the story itself. We do get a lot of characters in here that I feel are important to it. I enjoyed it. It was probably one of the better ones I've read by George Orwell. I have been wanting to read more of his works, so if you guys have read anything else by George Orwell that I don't have, those are the only 2 I've read. So if you got more that you think I would like, please let me know. Next one, I would say this is my number 2 favorite from Jane Austen, would be Emma. Emma is definitely a story, a lot of gossip, a lot of traveling, a lot of parties, a lot of get-togethers. I did love that part of this. This is kind of why I bumped it up a lot more than Pride and Prejudice and the other books. That and her books always kind of make me giggle at least a little bit because of the circumstances. Once you get the language, it becomes very easy to understand. And when I read my first one, it took me a little bit, but I eventually got it, and then I started looking at the story, and I'm like, oh, it's like I had an epiphany. Like, that's what's going on. She's learning about humility and how to speak to people decently and not sound like a bia. She's convinced that she knows what's best for people and who should marry who. And she gets upset when something doesn't happen the way it should. It's very gossipy, but at the same time, like I said, there was a lot of parties, a lot of get-togethers because of what the topic was about, getting people together. There was courtship, there was meeting each other, and people back then always lurched into, ooh, he looked at her the right way, they're gonna get married. I didn't think it's funny, but this is definitely one of my better favorites from Jane Austen. Next one, higher up on the list, another one I read in school, Fahrenheit 451. For those of you who have not read this is a very important book. There have been many editions of this book where it's been white cover with a match striker as the spine, and a whole bunch of other different versions of this I think are really, really cool because they speak what the book is about. This book is about a dystopian world where his job is to destroy the most illegal of commodities, printed books. Any kind of book. Doesn't matter what it is, what it's about, it needs to go because it's giving people ideas. You're not supposed to know about these certain things. Between all the destruction, and he meets somebody who has been hoarding some. So we travel from there, he starts questioning everything, and then we move forward with the story. I really enjoyed this. This actually was read my senior year as well. I really enjoyed the books I read my senior year. Believe it or not, that was my favorite year. This one, I really did enjoy because, I mean, it deals with books. Whoever loves books knows what this is about because this is a very book-driven story. And what would happen if we continued with the amount of book banning and book burnings and all this other stuff that's just snowballing to what it is now. Definitely one of my favorite ones. Would highly recommend this, especially if you have not read it yet. Definitely give this one a try. The next one, this one I read, I believe last year, or it could be, I believe it was last year. I don't remember. I read The Call of the Wild by JackLondon. I have been wanting to read both White Fang and Call of the Wild. I only got in round of one. I do want to read the other one. Hopefully, if not this year, then next year. That'll be like a priority list read. This one is so sad, okay? Between the abuse of the dogs and everything that happens with the humans and the dogs, how they're treated, what their lives were like, moving forward with things that happened that humans even had no control over, was just so depressing. It made me cry. I love the writing. The writing was so good. I was crying by the end of it because it gets you to that point. If you've never read it before, I would highly recommend reading it because this is about a story from a dog's perspective as a husky living in the Alaskan area where there is a lot of dog sledding. He grows up from owner to owner who mistreats him one right after another. And going through the things that they do between the hardships of the weather, the starvation. I have wanted to watch the movie with Harrison Ford in it. I have been meaning to watch that because I feel like that version may represent this better. I don't know yet. I need to get into that. It's so sad. It is so sad. If you haven't read this one, be prepared. Be prepared to cry. If you want to cry, that would be a good one for you to read. Next one, and a lot of people will disagree with me on this because he is a very dense author and this is a very popular book. I love fantasy, this kind of fantasy. So that's why I feel like I would do better with Brandon Sanderson and, you know, the Cosmere and everything like that. I do want to get into that as well. Not this year. I feel like that's going to be one for when I get my series down a little bit and I can afford to have the thicker series books on my shelves. The Hobbit, I grew up watching. I grew up watching them. I watched the cartoon when I was a kid, and then we slowly introduced me to the regular Lord of the Rings trilogy. I watched them all, loved them, and then they started redoing the Hobbits, and I'm like, I get to see these in theaters. Yay! and then they started making other things. I just love this world. For me, that's part of the reason why I love this book so much. I don't feel like it's because of the story itself. They did a little bit better job with the movies, kind of breaking everything down more and getting you to understand it better. If you can handle the writing, it's a really good story, especially if you have not read it before. If you like fantasy without romance in it, and dragons and dwarves and all this, you'll love it. For those of you who do not know what The Hobbit is about, which would be surprising, by the way, this book is about, there is a little hobbit, little itty bitty that's shorter than a dwarf, lives in his little land, gets roped in by a wizard, Gandalf, to go on this quest with a bunch of dwarves to reclaim their home in a mountain with a dragon in it. So that's pretty much the gist of it. The rest of it, this one does have a lot of the songs in it. I did appreciate that with the new adaptations of The Hobbit that they did. They included the songs. I loved how they sounded so much better than the other movies that they've made. It's such a good story, in my opinion. A lot of people don't like it, or they don't like the writing, or they don't like the author. I don't care. This is one that you can disagree with me all you want, but I like it. And I hope that I can get to Lord of the Rings within the next 2 years. That would be nice. I figured out that they are on Kindle Unlimited, so whenever I decide to pick it up, I can just start. Alright, the next one and the top one for my recommendations, the one that I feel that is the best out of all the ones I could recommend that I enjoyed the most, would be The Outsiders. The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. This book is very, very short, but it packs a punch. If you guys like a combination of Stand By Me and Grease, I would say both of those, you would like it. Because obviously we are set in Grease times. This made me cry. I was on an airplane when I was reading this, and I got about near the end, and I started crying. So I started crying in the middle of a plane, and I showed somebody because they asked her if I was okay, and they're like, "Oh, you'll be okay." And I'm like, "No, I won't be okay." I really enjoyed the story. If you guys like Stand By Me by Stephen King, or you like that found family group of boys getting together, being there for one another, causing some stuff together, definitely read this, because this was such a good book. Or as little as it is, it was described very well. But I enjoyed this very, very much. It is definitely one of my top ones. I didn't put it in the uppers only because there was a lot that I felt like went above this. But it is definitely up there. But next, we are starting with my favorite of the favorites, my upper ranks, top favorite 6 books that I can recommend to you guys, that I would die for, that I absolutely love, that I would definitely read again. That's at this level. Starting off with the hardest book that I ever had to read. It's down here. I read this actually this year. You guys, if you've been watching my videos, have probably seen me read this. The Color Purple by Alice Walker. Guys, written in diary form, this is about a girl who has a very rough childhood. She and her sister are under the care of their father. Their father decides to send one of her sisters off to marry her to one of the other men in town. Meanwhile, their father is not a very nice man. Flat out. Horrible. So, things happen. She gets married off. Her sister ends up staying with her for a little bit and then runs off. I'm not going to give the whole thing because you're supposed to read it to figure it out. They did make a new movie about this. They turned it into a musical. I did not appreciate when they did that because this story is meant to be hard. It is meant to be a hard story. If you appreciated James by Percival Everett, if you enjoyed that story, I would definitely read this because the same heartfelt, sad, depressing, but also very hopeful story. And it makes me, I cried. I'll admit, I cried at the end. It's always at the end. Why does that happen like that? But this definitely ties in with sisterly bonds and friendship and hardship. I did really, really enjoy this story. It is one of my top ones that I have read in a long time. It's so much easier to be like over here, just taking them off and then putting them back when I'm done instead of taking them all off and going to the desk. A lot better. Next favorite. This one was so hard to determine where it fell, but I finally figured it out. This ranking is number 5. We have my last Jane Austen book that I have read. Persuasion was the first one that I ever read by Jane Austen, and it is still one of my favorites because not only did we get the parties and the traveling and, you know, the courtshipness in here, but we also have lost love, we have mystery, we have corruption, we have a bunch of other things in here. For a shorter book, this packs a punch. And it is still one of my favorite ones. Out of all the ones I've read so far, I only haven't read 2. I haven't read Mayfield Park, and I believe it's pronounced Sedition? I gotta look into that a little more. But out of all the ones so far, this has been my favorite. And it's still the first one I ever read, and I thought it would get better as I went. No. This is still the best one, in my opinion. I love her writing. I want to read the rest of them. She is an author I want to read to zero because I understand this kind of language if it's going to be an older one. I do really, really enjoy this one. She's easier to understand than William Shakespeare, and personally a lot better. But this one is about a lady who is trying to be courted. She's trying to see different people. She ends up meeting someone that she met from her past that she was supposed to marry before, and he ended up creating life for himself, so he shows up back in her life. And she's like, okay. And we figure out other things from other people and what's going on with her friends and everything else. I really enjoyed this one. If you like Jane Austen and you haven't read this one, please read it. Please, 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 please read it. All right. Next up, this is number 4 on the list, and probably one of the biggest books I have read in a long time. I read this last year. You could probably guess just from the cover. Dracula by Bram Stoker. What I was anticipating with this story, the original Dracula story, I was not anticipating this. I didn't anticipate the amount of gothic feel and the atmosphere that came with this. It's a very dark story, or at least it portrays it as a very dark story. Like, but it's starting to go numb in this. But this story is about a man who is trying to sell this mansion to a certain elderly gentleman, and he has to go travel to settle the deal with him. So he leaves his wife and he goes and travels over there, ends up staying there for way too long because it's a big castle and he's keeping him under lockdown. So we meet some other characters in here and we figure out not really the origin of what was going on. It's more just like he already exists, but this is a story about him, his wife, a doctor who's involved with this, and Mr. Dracula. This is a very gothic story I did not anticipate. It is probably one of my favorite classics that I have ever read. And being that it is vampire based, and being that it is gothic and a lot like a thriller, I really enjoyed this. If you like hunting and mystery and thrills, or you just love vampires, I would definitely pick this up. His writing is very easy to understand. Even though it's a chunker, the story is very action-y. It may not seem like it in the beginning, but it definitely starts picking up the more you get into it. I listened to the audio of this one. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Loved it. We are at a junior year pick for me. Of course, it doesn't show you very well, but that should give you a hint. Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Read this in high school. Have not stopped thinking about it ever since. I love the way my teacher described the underlining meanings of the story. It's about being vulnerable with things that happen that you have no control over. There were definitely some surprises in here that I was not anticipating. I've always had an interest in this kind of timeline. I believe this one was the 20s, 2010s, something like that. The flapper stage, because that's what the atmosphere screams. This is about a very rich gentleman who loves having extravagant parties and invites everyone to come to his parties, hoping that his lost love will one day just walk in. And her cousin lives across the street from him. He gets to know him, and they discover that he knows who Daisy, I believe, is. This is, I wouldn't say it deals with corruption, but it would definitely work with misunderstandings, some betrayal in here. A lot of it's just very atmospheric, but the main point of it is really just living your life under the watchful eyes, knowing God is watching you. There was a lot of hidden meanings that we went over in this book. When I was in high school, some of it I got, some of it I didn't, and I could definitely debate on. But overall, just the story is something I really enjoyed. I still think about. I watched the new adaptation of the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. It wasn't bad. It was definitely different. I wish there wasn't so much CGI. And they did actual, some of the things that happened in the book. I wish they did in that. But it is, once again, very sad. But it definitely left its mark. It is very memorable. And that's what made it in the top ranks for me. Number 2. We're getting a little heavier. I don't have my other copy. My other copy is over there. This is an older copy, but I'll show you just so you guys can see. Les Miserables. Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Where do I even start? Okay, we got everything. We got everything in here. We've got betrayal, we've got deception, we have wars, we have depression time period. Even more so, the hardships, the heartbreak, the family ties. I could go on and on and on. But mostly, it was just a really engaging story. I had no idea what it was about when I first picked it up. I had never heard of what it was about before. I never watched the movies, never done anything with this whatsoever. So when I read it for the first time, I was baffled. And I cried. Again. Most of my uppers, I either cried or I felt really, really connected towards. This one, the amount of hardship and heartbreak that I got within even the first few chapters is just very depressing, but also very, very, very strong and enlightening to how things were back in that time period of France, I believe, where most of this takes place, and the war that's starting to happen. It just, that is such a good story. It's another one I would fully recommend if you have not read this yet. There is a shortened version that I did read on Audible. They do have a shortened version of this as well that condenses it down because the writing is a little dense. But if you read the shortened version, it is a lot better. You're able to understand it. You get the story just as well as you would have read it, if not more understood it, than reading the original text. That brings me to my last one. We are finally almost done. This is my top favorite. I would reread this. I fully recommend this, and not for the reasons people think. This is a very well-known book, one that I fully recommend. If you have not read this yet, you definitely need to. Wicked by Gregory McGuire is my favorite classic I have read so far in my life. And not because of the new movie. I read this before the new movie. I still have not watched the new movies with Ariana Grande in it. Don't want to until the second one comes out, and then I'll watch it. Guys, I was not anticipating this at all. Between Wizard of Oz and this, completely different. Completely different. This is not just a villain origin story, but you understand how she gets to this point, the childhood she lived in, the heartache she had to go through. I could rant for hours about this book. This book has so much in it. If you like, I would say there's not really battles, but little skirmishes. Definitely in here, talking animals, corruption, murder, family ties, family drama, a lot of family drama, magic, and just, I could go on and on and on. For those of you who have seen the new movies, let me know if they're worth watching or if they're anything like the book. If you don't know if they're like the book, that's your hint to read it. People think that this is just also a one book. This is actually a part of a 4-book series. And I still have yet to read the rest of them, but I fully intend on adding this to my list next year. I believe the next one is called Son of a Witch. Like I said, I could talk for hours. I could talk for hours about this. This was actually my mother's favorite. She sent me this copy, and then there's another copy over there with my collections. Guys, if you have not read this, you need to read it because it is so good. And not only that, but the audiobook was really good. The narrator did a really good job of everything. You know, not only that, but the amount of discrimination that happens in this book really took me by surprise as well. Like, you don't get that in Wizard of Oz, really. This one, you do. Not only with animals, but also with other things as well. There's so much to the story. I love it. Flat out, I love it. I will probably read this again after I read all the books, just so I can read them all over again. But it is a definite favorite. If you have not read it, please read it. But she's the top. She is number one. She is my favorite. Just imagine I'm holding up a really, really big stack of all the classic books that we just talked about because we are officially done. If you guys have lasted this long in this video, I commend you because this was a lot of talking and a lot of conversation with just myself and my thoughts. It is a lot of books, but at the same time, those are all the classics that I have read over the course of my time reading classics from school onward. I really enjoy classics because they give you a different visual outlook of our world or different dystopian ideas, really diving into the world. I can see James being another classic book. There's so many different ideas out there, and there's so much here. There's so much here we can talk about. Some people think that you have to have, like, you know, a certain standard to read classic books, or, you know, they're like Shakespeare where they're not easy to understand. Not all of them. Not all of them are hard to understand. You got things like Hyde, you got things like Dracula, Secret Garden, Fahrenheit 451. Those are really, really easy. They don't have hard languages to understand the Old English. You know, if you want Old English, Charles Dickens, Jane Austen, William Shakespeare, Nathaniel Hawthorne, all those are Old English writers. If you can't handle that, then don't read it. But there are plenty of other classics out there that you don't have to really think about to read them. I mean, look at The Color Purple. That one's probably one of the newest ones. Figure out your comfort zone. If you want more thrill, if you want more comfort, it doesn't matter. But I feel like classics are important, and they show us different parts of history that have kind of been lost because people don't read classics as much anymore. They feel like they don't need to, just because it's old English, I can't understand it. It's just an excuse. But I really enjoyed doing this. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed showing you guys all my favorite classic books, at least the ones I've read so far. I do have a lot more on the shelves that I have to get to, like Count of Monte Cristo, The Crime and Punishment, Ender's Game, Wuthering Heights I hope to read soon this year too. There's just so many other ones that I want to get to. If you guys have any classic recommendations that I didn't mention or you think I would really enjoy, please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me today and sticking it out through the video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Love your eats and drink your teas. And I'm gonna go get started reading some more. Bye!
You say it's hard to tell just what I'm thinking. You think it's hard to see behind my